If you want to know who's really bothered by uncleanliness, is when the stain falls on the garment. One who's obsessed with cleanliness really cannot tolerate it. They maybe even take the step to even go home to change their garment because they can't wait it out through the entire day. And again, perhaps it sounds a little extreme, but let's use the example. Or, we say go home, it doesn't mean in drive-along proximities. It means the idea they can really not, they can't fathom that stain. Anyway, they sit out there the day, it bothers them. They're annoyed by it. They're supposed to someone who's clean, yet in soul he's not so obsessed with cleanliness like the first. So when something truly on the very beginning, they will always put on the clean garment, and when they will always side something which is not so clean. But if they're in the middle of their daily affairs and something, a spot, their garment was spotted with a stain, they would wait it out easily, without any real bother, at least to the end of the day, to the next day when they have to again put a new garment on. So this is a nice example, or some type of an example, which illustrates the difference of the tzaddik gomer, the complete tzaddik, which is not only has no connection to anything which is contrary, which is opposite than God, godliness, but more so he transformed any type of energy which was ever geared and channeled in the direction which was not impeccably clean. He transformed that. And again, as we use the example, the true idea of Ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, loving Hashem with all your heart, as the Mishnah says, with your Yetzer Hara, it's not only, in other words, not only with your godly soul, but as well with your animal soul. We use the term animal soul again, just to say it very briefly. This is a common expression that Rabbi uses throughout the entire Tanya when he describes the Yetzer Hara, because the point of the Alter Rebbe is, no, we're not dealing with something which is really bad, is evil, is vicious, it's just animalistic. And look at the life of the animal, even goring, it's not its nature, as expressed in halacha as well. An animal has to gore multiple times till he becomes kind of this goring animal, because animal by nature is not particularly vicious, not bad, it's just animalistic, and describe the animal is whatever contributes to its comfort, that's pretty much what it does, and we all have within ourselves that. It's not necessarily we want to be bad, it's just we want to give in to ultimately whatever contributes to our comfort. These are the two sides, the godly side, which works with purpose, with sense, with meaning, mainly with more so with a godly purpose and a godly sense, and a godly meaning is he's fighting the part within us which just wants to do things naturally, again, whatever makes us comfortable with. So the tzaddik got rid of and when you shun that part, when you shun that Yetzer Hara, or in this case we call it the animal soul, just to bring it down, it not necessarily you transformed it, not necessarily rather you got rid of it. You not necessarily got rid of it, because when you shun something, ultimately you don't let it express itself, but in its core basis, in essence, it's always remaining, and at times, if you don't completely look after it, it could flare up and again be an opponent to one's avodas Hashem. So the tzaddik gomer got rid of it. He brings the pasuk BAYT mikirbecha. You go to the pasuk says, get rid of the evil within your midst. And the tzaddik, this tzaddik she'eini gomer, the incomplete tzaddik, he also got rid of the evil. The problem is he didn't transform the evil to become an ally, and therefore he's called eini gomer. He's incomplete. But where do you know it? And this is getting to the point which we're holding. Where do you ever know? Where can you ever tell that the tzaddik, the incomplete tzaddik, has something, and again, in its core, in its essence, something which is not aligned with God and godliness, is not his original approach. His original approach, he's always searching for God and seeking God, and he's a tzaddik. And as we explained, the tzaddik has, when you say he shunned the Yetzer Hara, it means to say on the surface, right? We're looking at the latter, for the example, the one who is clean but not obsessed with cleanliness. On the surface, he has no Yetzer Hara. He got rid of his Yetzer Hara. Ubiyar tahara mikirbecha means he got completely rid of the Yetzer Hara. So he has no temptation to do anything incorrect, and his whole drive is just to do what Hashem wants, just to do. He pursues the God and godliness, and anything which is opposite than God and godliness. He also is disgusted with it. He abhors it to a great degree and extent, and he, you could use the words, hates it, and he despises anything which is not aligned with godliness. Yet he's still called an incomplete tzaddik, because what he's done, he's completely eradicated. He crushed the evil. He crushed that Yetzer Hara, but because he didn't transform it, the Yetzer Hara did not yet become an ally. Not the Yetzer Hara does not love Hashem, certainly not like the godly soul loves Hashem. So that's why it's called the incomplete tzaddik. But where do you see it? Not when his active approach in his avodas Hashem, but where do you see it is how does he appreciate, or how does he deal with something which does not have a godly purpose. The complete tzaddik has a overt hatred and he's abhorred by anything which is not aligned with avodas Hashem. And as we mentioned, again, it doesn't mean that they're completely removed from the reality of this world. They eat normal, they sleep normal, because that's what a person, as a human being, is demanded to do. If a person could eat normal food, it doesn't mean he's eating something which is completely tasteless. But as we gave the example that even in the secular world, in other words, his approach is not just to anything he eats. We gave the example, a good apple. He's not into finding the taste of the apple. He has something, he's involved in something, he's involved in serving Hashem. He doesn't make a point of how the apple tastes or doesn't taste. And we gave the example in the secular world, somebody who's involved in an important business deal, and he takes a break to eat an apple. In the second half of the day, he's going to make a lot of money. To the extent if you will ask him, what do you eat for the break? He has to remind himself, because his mind is on the next half of the day when he's going to make that important business deal. So if you served him grass, as an example, we gave the example, certainly it'll catch his mind as he's eating it, like what's it all about. But he'll eat the apple, and he'll have naturally appreciated the great extent the taste of the apple. But if you ask him an hour later, what did you satisfy yourself on that break? It will take him a few seconds to remind himself, because as he was biting into the apple, he had a whole world of how the next half a day is going to unfold. So I gave an example even in the secular world, not even someone who's Jewish. It's the idea that there's a bigger picture in mind, and so too the life of the tzaddik. Even when he spoke about the idea of abhorring something which is associated with worldly pleasures, but the Alter Rebbe adds these words which have no godly objective to them. That's what he abhors. That's what is ma'us, which means is disgusted in the eyes of the tzaddik. Something which is there just to fulfill the temptation and the lust and desires of the body. As opposed to something which has a godly purpose, it has a taste, but that's, again, it's something which is completely consumed in the ultimate reason what that apple is contributing, that the person should be healthy and be able to go on with his next part of the day, which is again the life of the tzaddik, is solely avodas Hashem, service to God. So again, where do you see the difference between both of them? As an example, where do you know that one is obsessed with cleanliness or not? It's not when they're active approach, but if something the opposite of cleanliness kind of happens in their experience. As an example we gave, a stain that falls on their garment, then you see who's truly obsessed with cleanliness. And the same thing, the tzaddik gomor, because he has nothing of the evilness. And how do we know he has nothing? Because he transformed the evil. The evil became an ally to Kedusha. He loves Hashem with all his heart, meaning Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara. So there's nothing of the Yetzer Hara. So he's so involved in Kedusha, therefore and that's why when it comes to something which is antithetical to Kedusha, to holiness, he's completely despised by it. He's completely disgusted with it. While the tzaddik she'eini gomor he doesn't appreciate it. He doesn't see the virtue of the physical pleasure or anything which contributes to the physical pleasure without a godly purpose. He'd rather everything with a godly purpose. He's more than rather everything with a godly purpose. He's fervorous that everything should have a godly purpose. But in the same token, when it doesn't, he doesn't stand with such an overt abhorrence. That's how we know, like we said in the example, when the stain fell and you could sit out to the other day, to the rest of the day, that shows you're not truly obsessed with cleanliness. So to the tzaddik, that's when we know that his love to Hashem is almost complete, but it's incomplete. Incomplete it is. And this is where we were holding. Like we said, that was the final words that we concluded. And the tzaddik she'eini gomer, the incomplete tzaddik, she'eini seine hara seine hasiter acher betachlis hasina, which does not hate the sitra acher, which is again a term used for the impure forces. We explained this again multiple times. Maybe we'll just repeat it. The sitra achra, the other side, because kedusha, holiness, that's the true side. We don't even, anything which is not associated with kedusha, with godliness, we don't even dignify it. With a name. We call it just the other side, which is a term showing that it's really meaningless, aligned with anything which is meaningless, which is not aligned with kedusha. That is the impure forces. So the tzaddik she'eini gomer, the incomplete tzaddik, does not have a hatred to sitra achra betachlis hasina, with the ultimate hatred. V'lochein eini mayis gam kein bara betachlis. Consequently, he is not disgusted with anything with evil. Again, betachlis, with the ultimate, the absolute me'usa me'isa, with the absolute abhorrence. And because he's not disgusted with evil, with the absolute abhorrence, that is a demonstration that he still remains to some degree, to some love even of it, or pleasure of it, and so on. And he says again, it's not an overt love and a pleasure for anything which is not godly. On the contrary, he's a tzaddik gomor, but he's dealing in a subtle manner, that there is a av of it, eize shemetz, which means there has to be just a vestige of love and pleasure towards it. But again, you're dealing naturally in a subtle level, because we're dealing with the tzaddik. The tzaddik has no overt av of it, tainug, to anything which is contrary to lukus. That's why he used the shemetz. As long as there is, as a result rather, that the sinna, the hatred and the abhorrence is not with an ultimate hatred and abhorrence, al karchach, inevitably nisha eza shemetz ava v'tainug l'sham, that there remains a bit, right, a vestige of love and pleasure towards it.
How do we get from a lack of absolute hatred to a vestige of love? Couldn't you say indifference? I mean, there's something in between, surely.
That's why I emphasized. We're dealing on subtle levels over here. Someone who got rid of the evil, he crushed it, he shunned it completely. It's so minimal. It's like we gave the example. You take a speck of coffee or a bit of coffee and put it in a bottle of water. On the surface, you can't see it, but with certain ways, I don't know exactly how you can detect it. What you detect is real coffee. So when you're dealing on the surface, wow, this man is a tzaddik.
Which kind of tzaddik? Tzaddik gomer?
Eine gomer, right? Eine gomer.
On himself enough that he can
completely got rid of the Sahara. Sorry?
Can he turn into a tzaddik gomer?
He definitely can. But right now we're defining the two.
Okay.
He can turn into a tzaddik gomer, especially because he's a tzaddik. As we mentioned last week, we're going to get to this main point over here for this reason that Alter Rebbe calls it Sefer Shel Beinanim, a Sefer of Beinanim, because for the Beinanim to become a tzaddik is not a simple task at all. For that matter, the mandate and the goal and certainly the original objective of man is to be a Beinanim, not a tzaddik. But here we're defining, in other words, like we mentioned as well last week, the reason why the Alter Rebbe elaborates chapter 10, what the tzaddik is, the two levels of tzaddik gomer, tzaddik she'eini gomer. Chapter 11, the other side, the Rosh of Tov, or Rosh of Erala, is the Rosh of Gomer or the Rosh of she'eini gomer. Let's use those words. That description sets the tone to understand with clarity what the Beinani is, and ultimately what our mandate in being the Beinani. So if you notice,
this probably can become the tzaddik.
She'eini gomer? Not necessarily.
No?
The whole tzaddik, the idea.
Tzaddik gomer.
What?
Could he become a tzaddik gomer? Is a tzaddik gomer born a tzaddik gomer?
A tzaddik gomer is, you could say it's born. It's something more like a gift. It's something which comes from above. It's not something which is. It's not something which we can obtain. I mean, let's look at it realistically.
That.
We can what?
We can't become a tzaddik gomer.
We can't become a tzaddik gomer. Maybe not even a tzaddik she'eini gomer also, because if you think about it, especially as we explained, these are not terms which are they're not terms that are just with these expressed and illustrated just in words, ideally. Let's understand this practically speaking. You're dealing with somebody when you say he got rid of the evil, it means to say he walks the street, he has no challenges. Because when you say he got rid of the evil, there's nothing within him compelling him to think, look, or hear something which is ungodly. Or not only ungodly, but clearly not godly. The average, each one of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we have challenges throughout the day. And as we mentioned as well, not only once in a while, every hour, sometimes, if we're honest with ourselves, many times we have challenges every 5 minutes or 5 seconds or 5 milliseconds also. If we're out there in the world, we have constant challenges. Why do we have challenges? Because there's something within us which is driving in a direction and telling us, think that, look there, hear that, speak that, or do that. That's the story. That's our story. All right. Let's be honest with ourselves. I'll talk about myself and most of the people I know. This is the story of our life. I'm sorry.
No, we got these little men in us.
Right. I guess men as opposed to women, right? Okay. Yeah.
Little men.
I hear what you say. Yeah.
We got mentioned.
In other words, so that means that we have a lot of evil within ourselves. Okay, now the question, we have a lot of it because the fact that our decisions are not remembered from second to second. We have to make a brand new decision, sometimes every second or every millisecond sometimes. That shows that the evil that exists within ourselves is potent, that it doesn't remember from second to second. I just decided I'm not giving in, but it will come up to the surface a few seconds later, or even less than that, right? That shows that it's very powerful. So how can we ever think about calling ourselves a tzaddik? Or believing that we are there to be the tzaddik. I mean, we hope one day the Eibishter will reduce that fire which exists within our heart, which brings us to want to do this, that, and the other, right? And that's why it's called a gift from above, or like you say, someone's born in a certain way. The average person. So if that's the case, are we all bad people because we have this potent nefesh habahamis which is always driving us in a certain direction? The answer is no, because as we mentioned as well, the significant majority of Torah mitzvahs, or the mandate of Torah mitzvahs, is make sure that your thought, speech, or action are pure. And we can maintain a pure thought, speech, and action at all times. Because what is this heart, or what is this message, what is this signal telling us? Think that. And we say no. So as long as you put a block between the heart and the thought, your thought can remain pure. So if your thought is pure on a constant basis, and your speech is pure on a constant basis, and your actions are appropriate and aligned with Ratzon Hashem on a constant basis, you never sinned. And it could be you never sinned, and you'll never sin if you constantly fight that battle. But from never sinning to be called a tzaddik, there's a very long distance. Because the tzaddik doesn't even have the temptation. He doesn't have those signals. His heart is not telling him, think that, look there, or hear that, or do that, or speak that. Because that's called a bi'arta haramir kirbecha. He got rid of the evil within his midst. Within his own midst. In other words, within himself. You got rid of the evil means he has no evil. So it's something which is completely, it's not common. Like even we mentioned last week, as I said, if you see the tzaddik, even on the end of the Gemara, bring him. I want to see him. I'd like to talk to him at least for a few moments. Because this is something which is totally unusual, if we're only realistic with ourselves. Remember, tzaddik is not a badge.
But his shachar isn't probably as big as a little...
We'll discuss that as well. Everything is going to say, good question, so who has more reward? Maybe you'd say the Beinoni because it's a constant struggle. So there's a few things over here. First of all, not everything is measured in the context of reward or punishment, or let's call it reward. The question is who's really closer to the divine, in the sense of tzaddik. On the other hand, another thing is that tzaddik, many times, there's very few who are born in this way. You could say a nasi, like Moshe Rabbeinu, for example. Moshe Rabbeinu, the pasuk says, when he was born, Vayaris Kitayv, the whole house, he glowed. The Torah says, Kitayv, in the moment even, in other words, before he ever entered the whole notion of Avodas Hashem, struggle, he was a little child as he was born, in the first few seconds of his life. And where does that come from? We'd say that he was born a Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's again very unique. It's not the norm. When I mean not norm, it's very possible and even probable that the tzaddik, before he became a tzaddik v'teinigam, or even and certainly tzaddik gomor, it could be he probably crossed that Beinani Avodah service to become a tzaddik. So if you're even talking about reward, it doesn't mean he's completely removed from that, because it's very possible that he even crossed that Beinani struggle, and it's a real struggle. The Alter Rebbe alludes to this milchama, war, struggle, challenge, a few times. Twice in the Tanya he says Lashon Milchama Atzuma. I believe it's twice Milchama. It's enormous. He agrees. It's an enormous challenge. But the fact, again, here we're dealing the definition of the tzaddik, Gomer or Beinani, we're going to get to. The fact that you say there's a challenge, let's say you have enormous and a potent evil within ourselves, that's certainly not the tzaddik Gomer, a tzaddik at all. Because even the tzaddik Shein Gomer, you say V'arta means he eradicated. So again, we're dealing solely on an subtle basis. When you say Ava v'tainig l'sham, love and pleasure, to there is obviously talking shemitz. Shemitz means a vestige, which is very, very, very slight. How do I know? Like we said in the example, on the surface they both look like clean people, and they love cleanliness. And the garment they would grab in the morning is only a clean garment, and you could really never tell the difference between the two. It's only when you see when some stain falls, one could fathom it, the other can't. And similar in the life of the tzaddik she'einu gomer, the fact that you see that he doesn't have an absolute abhorrence to anything which is not aligned with Kedusha, with God, or godliness, that is the greatest proof that some type of love, some type of pleasure he has. Now again, you're not talking about obviously avert love and pleasure, because if you avert love and pleasure to things which are not godly, you're not a tzaddik. You're talking about Ava v'tainig, and again, Ava v'tainig means to say you have a drive to it a little bit. Ava v'tainig doesn't mean like I say, I love it, I have a pleasure in it. That's not a tzaddik. That's far from a tzaddik. I love something which is not aligned with godliness, just something which contributes to the bodily temptation or desires. That's not a tzaddik at all. Shemitz Abba. Abba means that I'm fine with it. A pleasure in something means to say, a pleasure means I'm okay with it. On a most subtle manner, you must say that exists, because if not, he would have a sino v'hamius. He would have an absolute hatred and mius to that, betachlis, in an absolute level, similar to the tzaddik gomer. And therefore, the unclean garments were not removed. Remember, we use the term of the nefesh bahamis, the animal soul, the yetzer hara. We use the term, and it's important to mention this. It's like a little bit like we use the term like a missile. Depends what warhead you put on a missile. Could be something which is going to bring, hi, how are you? It's going to bring something which is one type of warhead. It could be another type of warhead. So in other words, what type of cap are you putting on? Here, take it. What type of cap are you putting on? And in this case, the Alter Rebbe uses the lashon, the expression, what type of garment are you putting on into that force? In other words, the animal soul, or the yetzer hara, it's ultimately a drive. It's a drive. You leave, if it's driven, if it's just allowed to be driven without any guide or control, or I would say even rather the word guidance, it's not guided in the right direction, and it's involved and it's here in this physical world, and it's open to worldly temptations, it's going to be driven to worldly temptations. And again, not necessarily it's going to stop. There's no stop sign between the permissible and the prohibited, because as long as it's interested in doing whatever contributes to its comfort, eventually there's an easy line between the permissible and this which is not permissible as well. It's because you just allow that energy and force without guidance to express itself without guidance, as opposed to what did the tzaddik gomer do? The tzaddik gomer, when you say transform, what it means to transform, it took that energy and guided it in a way that energy starts loving Hashem. That's what it means. The enemy became an ally. Because ultimately, what's the nefesh bahamis? It's a drive. It's an energy, right? We could find it within ourselves. Ultimately, what is it? It's a drive which is placed in this world by nature. Inherently, it's going to be driven to everything which it sees in front of its eyes. Maybe the car, the computer, or anything else. And again, the only thing is, once it becomes overly indulgent in the physical, or things which contribute to its comfort, there's no stop sign between the mutter and the asr, the permissible, and this which is prohibited. That's why that is ultimately the cause which leads the person, chas v'shalom, to do an aveira. But Avera doesn't begin with doing something vicious, or even something which is overtly an Avera. It's just, this is what I want to do, so I want to do it. I still have that temptation, so there's no stop sign, right? But once you take that drive and you you direct it you channel it, direct it in the right direction, that itself, the drive, you start loving Hashem. When you say you put on the cap of Avas Hashem, you put the cap of Avas Hashem on, so it starts loving Hashem. In other words, so that's the true transformation. That's when the enemy becomes an ally. And that is a life of the tzaddik gomer, as opposed to tzaddik she'eini gomer. He says he deals with the cap over here. And that's why I gave this introduction, just to understand the following words, that he says that he did not take off he still has, it wasn't completely removed. The cap wasn't removed. The cap, in this case, godim, right? There is the body, and then there's the garments. The garments are like the cap. Depends what type of garments a person wears. If it's clean garments and not clean garments. Nothing changes with the person if the garments are clean. It's just when you put on clean garments and beautiful garments, it beautifies the person. It brings out the best within the person itself. Did the person change? Didn't change. You wear unclean garments, you didn't change. You're the same person. Someone it brings out doesn't bring out the best part of you. So the garment, which is external, again, similar to that cap, the example we used, is nothing to do with the force and energy of the missile itself. The person's body didn't change. You put on a non-clean garment, it's bringing out something. It's not bringing out the best of you. You put on a clean garment, which is just external, right? But it's bringing out the best, now the garment of you. Now, there's the force of the and the energy of the Nefesh Bahamis, which is right now guided. It's removed, its garments, the external cap, the garments are removed completely. Anything which is got in same unclean garments, and only clean garments are placed. Again, the cap is the person's guided. He guides that energy, so that brings out the best within the person, means the best within the Nefesh Bahamis itself. The Nefesh Bahamis could start loving Hashem. By the Tzaddik She'eini Gomer, he definitely removed a lot. And again, but the only thing was more like he shunned it. He got rid of it, but he didn't remove the cap completely. That to put on that godly cap or the clean clothing on top of that force and energy of the Nefesh Bahamis. Therefore, it says mikol v'kol. He didn't remove it completely. V'lachein, therefore, lenepach l'teiv mamash is not completely transformed to good, because now wherever it's going to be driven, it's not necessarily going to be driven only to God, because it has a little bit of unclean garment on it. Like someone puts on most of his garments are clean, a few of his garments are not so clean. It'll bring out something nice within the person, but in the same token, it doesn't bring out a complete beauty of the person, because there's still remaining parts of his garments. If it's his gloves, his shoes, his or her shoes, it's something which it still does not bring out the best within you, as opposed to when everything is clean. So because he didn't remove the cap, and again we use the expression the cap, or in this case the garment completely, therefore it's not completely transformed. It has a bit, it comes through, the force and the energy of the Nefesh Bahamis comes through, like in the example we gave, the person's image comes through his garments, and if there remains just a few garments which are not completely clean, so his image comes out through that as well. And if the image that comes out through, even majority is clean, but if his image comes out through, or he's wearing some unclean garments, so his or her image comes out, again, through those garments as well, even though the majority of the garments are clean. And therefore, what is the picture they portray? Something which is incomplete. Right? It's a bit incomplete. Is it clear? The Nefesh Bahamis is a force. It's an energy. Depends what you put on that energy. Usually, when you don't guide it, what eventually forms the garments which are formed of that energy is something which is unclean. Anything which is associated with Avraham has worldly pleasures, because that's where the Nefesh Bahamis is without guidance. That's where it inherently expresses itself, because that's where it is. Right? So what's the problem? The problem is not the force and energy. Force and energy can be utilized to love Hashem as well. The problem is that it has all these garments, negative, unclean garments. So this energy is expressed through unclean garments. So it comes out in a very unclean manner. The person lives a life of an animal. What if you remove something, like we said before, the energy itself is neutral. It's like the person itself. The person's body is neutral. You put on unclean garments, the person himself expresses it himself in a certain way because he's wearing something unclean. So there's two dimensions over here. There's a person, the person's body, and then there is the external, which is the garments. So when a person puts on his body unclean garments, it's not only you look at the garments, you see they're unclean, the whole person is expressed in a certain way because he's wearing unclean garments. Same thing. When the Nefesh Bahamis is not guided and not channeled, so is driven with an unclean cap, which is the unclean garments, so then he's expressing himself like an animal. The drive is an animalistic drive. He lives in animals. Let me just conclude as opposed to when you take the same person, without any change of the person, you put on clean garments, that person comes out looking clean. The person comes out looking presentable. The person feels good the way they look. And they really come out in a very different, and then they truly look very different. What changed over here? The external facade changed, because the person remains the same. The Nefesh Bahamis is a force of energy. It's a force of energy. Depends on what kind of garments you're putting. If you leave it with the worldly garments, it's going to be forceful to be driven in worldly indulgence. Or indulgence in worldly affairs. But when you put on a godly garment over here, it's a drive, right? It's an energy, like similar to the body, or we said the same, the missile, and it's a drive. But if you put on a clean cap or a clean garment, or like we said by the person, you put on a clean garment over the person wears clean clothes, so presents himself, or the person feels good about himself, and people look at the person very different than if he was wearing unclean garments. So ultimately, Nefesh Bahamis is a drive. It's a force, it's a ball of energy. Depends what kind of garment you... What?
You'd say power.
More than power. Because it's an energy. If you got it in the right direction means that you'll explain it. Like we said the other day, there's an animal which is non-domestic, an animal which is domestic. What you did is you trained it. And the same way we can train the animal within ourselves. In other words, we take off the unclean garments. And ultimately what happens is, that's when we say the animal becomes an ally, because that force, the force which exists within the animal soul right now, it does not have those external garments, and it only has clean garments, so it comes out very clean. In the concept of the neshama, it loves Hashem. The tzaddik she'einu gomer, most of it is probably clean, but a little bit is not so clean. So therefore, the Nefesh Bahamis is not solely driven to God and the godly reality. It doesn't have the full v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, because the godim hatzaim, the unclean garments, are not completely removed. And therefore, again, so it works both ways. And again, because they're not completely removed. So that energy is not driven to where? It's not driven to godliness. It's not driven to godliness. He's not so abhorred by anything which is antithesis to God and godliness. It goes really together. Let me just see if there's any culmination to this phrase. So just to... Good time, yeah?
Okay, yeah, so I had two quick questions.
Yeah.
So when you're emphasizing that the animal soul is kind of tar, right? How do we square that with the notion that if we aren't really careful with how we direct it,
right,
it's going to take us to bad places?
Right.
I have trouble understanding its neutrality, because without direction,
right,
it's not going to be good.
Okay, so the answer: what if you're dealing with people who you're dealing with in a place that people are careless the way they dress. They don't care if it's nice clothing. They don't care if it's dirty clothing. That's the norm. These people get out there, put whatever they have on, and exists probably in this world as well. People are completely indifferent to what they wear. This is the norm, right? You have to introduce, because this is the norm of the places, this is the norm in their life and lifestyle. Now you have to tell them that if you put on something clean, or maybe nice, that's going to bring out a certain glare, a certain glow within you, because you will be dressed so nicely. Think about this, right? What you're doing is you have to introduce something new, because that's the norm within their society. Right? Does it mean that there is no neutrality over here? In our society, there's not only neutrality, because we're so accustomed to wear the neat, the clean, the nice, right? So this becomes the norm by us. By definition, it's neutral. The question is what society you're in. Because the Nefesh Bahamis finds itself in this world. And I compare this world to these group of people which they constantly dress, they're careless in the way they dress. Most of them, and most times, they dress unclean, certainly unneat. So again, this is the similarity to the Nefesh Bahamis, which finds itself in this physical world, which there's so many physical temptations and things which are again not aligned with God and godliness in this world. So this is kind of the norm. It doesn't take away one iota of the Nefesh Bahamis being neutral. It's just because it's placed on its own merit, in other words, the initial energy, or rather its core energy. The reason why it's so inclined to act animalistic is because it finds itself, it landed in this world where most of the garments, i.e. whatever's in front of our eyes, by nature, by instinct, are things which are not aligned with godliness. Similar to that society, like we just said, that the average person doesn't dress normally, or doesn't dress neatly, and dresses in a dirty fashion.
I find the dress metaphor a little bit limiting.
What?
I find that the whole metaphor that you're using of
Yes.
the clothes
Is what?
I find it limiting.
Right.
It's not a satisfying metaphor for the discussion of we call it the animal soul. Let's say, why don't we take...
Where did the animal soul land? It landed right here.
Let's say you
In
take
front,
it...
yeah.
Look,
So
if you think of
it's
it as desire, right?
Okay,
Desire. Let's say you take a
Okay.
child who's raised in a very tamimistic environment, right?
Right.
Clean clothes.
Yeah.
But still, without direction, that child is going to have desires that will take him
Right.
in all
So
kinds of
use
directions.
exactly.
Selfishness. And,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why? Because he's in a selfish world. He's in a
Right.
world of greed. He's in a world which people run after the physical. In other words, take for example the neshama before it comes down to the world in Gan Eden, for example. The whole idea of selfishness doesn't exist. All these negative characters don't exist in a spiritual world. It's only exist here, right here in our own world, because that is the reality of Elam Haza. If you remember, we learned it. I don't know if you even hear it. It says, "Kol ma'aseh Elam Haza koshim v'ra'im." This is the innate, inherent nature of this world. So you take a child, right? Does it mean, for example, if you're going to take a child and like someone once said, could you take away the Yitzhahara of a child if you keep him secluded till he'll become 20 years old? The answer is not at all. You put him in a closet at 20. After 20, he's going to have the same challenge as someone who was not placed in a closet for 20 years. Exactly the same challenge, because that's the makeup of the person's body, which again is aligned and synonymous with everything associated with this physical world. With this physical world is kol ma'aseh Elam Haza koshim v'ra'im, because all negative characters, or everything which is leila Hashem heima, the things which are not aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is the very nature of Elam Haza, and that's where the Nefesh Bahamis is placed. So the cap is overwhelming. The garments, these negative garments, or unclean garments, that's the norm. And that's why I gave that example, because that is truly the norm. It doesn't take away, and I gave this example, the fact that you find other societies that being neat, being clean, wearing something up to date is the norm, as an example. Which means it's not something which is rooted in this very reality of this world, because you find hundreds of people or millions of people, maybe billions of people don't care what they dress like. It doesn't take away from this sense of that there exists neutrality, because you find other societies are the other way around. It means to say that we could accustom ourselves to take this body and dress it constantly in a neat fashion, because essentially this neutrality exists. Where do you see this neutrality exist? Because you see in the same physical world two different societies. People are caring the way they wear.
Decide where we want to go with it.
So that itself shows that there's equal neutrality. Means it's not driven to either way. And I gave this example because you find two different societies in the same physical world, which these people are careless and these people are very careful. Right? The same thing. The Nefesh Bahamis, the fact that it finds itself in the Elam Haza, it's right away in that society, as we gave the example, those who are careless the way they dress, because that's the thing as well. But essentially, the makeup of the Nefesh Bahamis, right? It's a little bit theoretical, right? Because we all find ourselves we don't have this Nefesh Bahamis in Gan Eden. So ultimately, it's always landing in that society which was careless the way they dress. But it doesn't take away, ideally, from the fact that the makeup, right? The makeup, the chemistry, what the Nefesh Bahamis is. Nefesh Bahamis is a neutral energy, and it has the ability to be placed guided in a way that, again, you put on clean garments, and once you put on clean garments, the force in the Nefesh Bahamis starts loving Hashem, because it was placed clean garments, like you put clean garments on the person's guf, the person's body. the body comes shining through, even though you didn't do anything to the body at all.
You know, I don't understand the part you said that if you take a child and you put them into a box and they're not exposed, they're still going to be exposed. Is it because Yetzalei Hadam Ra, because people are born with that?
Because this is the makeup of Elam Haza. You're born with it, you're living with it. This is the texture of this world. Everything. And where did it come? It wasn't always like that. As we know, the time of, for example, important, good you're pointing it out. For example, the first 6 days of creation, the world wasn't like that. It says this world was like Elam Haba. For that matter, you see it in the clear Teresh Miksav. It's not even a medrash. Adam Arishan and Chava did not know that they were unclothed. They didn't even notice. When they ate from the chayt, from the apple, then by his beishashu, they embarrassed. What happened? The answer is that the world has plunged, and from then and onwards, right? We're still in therapy from then, right? But I mean, because this is what that's why ultimately we land in that society. People are careless, but again, it doesn't take away from the neutrality of the Nashim Bahamis. Let's just finish these few lines over the time. On that page which begins Elu Shubatul Miyuta, the only thing is, again, he's still the tzaddik. Let's always remember, he's the tzaddik, which has nothing of anything on the surface, has nothing unclean about him. On the surface, we're all dealing with subtle levels. And I say this because, chas v'shalom, to say that he has an overt love and pleasure to something which is ungodly, because then he wouldn't be the tzaddik. That's the Beinani, or even less, or something that this is our story, right? We're dealing with the tzaddik, so it's so minimal, and so where is it? It says batal b'miyutei u'kalachashiv. You see also you see how clearly we're dealing. He uses the term ava and tainu, love and pleasure, based on what you asked before. Why the word love and pleasure means say there's a certain subtle comfort with it. He's comfortable with it. It doesn't. He could live with it, but again, it's batal b'miyutei u'kalachashiv. Kalachashiv means on the surface he's a tzaddik. You look at him, he's a tzaddik. You look at him, he's a true tzaddik, and everything about him is a tzaddik. But it's there, but batal b'miyutei u'kalachashiv. Kalachashiv means it's insignificant. And b'lachei nikra tzaddik v'ra kafaf v'batulei. Therefore, he's called a tzaddik. V'ra, the next page one after. V'ra means to say is evil, but loy. And quickly to show the Alter Rebbe, it has the pirush. The simple meaning of the Gemara is, if you remember, the tzaddik veraloi is the tzaddik which experiences evil. That was the literal meaning of the Gemara, translation of the Gemara. The Gemara says you have certain tzaddikim veraloi, they have certain experiences in their life that are not particularly good, and the Gemara says he's probably tzaddik she'eni gomer, because the whole reason why a person has negative experiences is because there's something incomplete with them, and Hashem wants to cleanse in their neshama. So the ra, and the meaning of the Gemara refers to the experience. Excuse me. Here the Alter Rebbe is using vera, which is the quote of the Gemara, part of the avodah, not his experience, but who he is. He's a tzaddik. Vera doesn't mean he's experiencing evil, but vera, that little evil which he has, is loy. Loy means is completely surrendered and subdued to the overwhelming tzaddikness of this person. He is a tzaddik. Let's not forget, he's a tzaddik. On the surface, it's only love to Hashem, right? But it's still loy, a little bit without loy. Therefore, his love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he certainly has love, and he has a fervent love to Hashem. We should remember again and again, it's a tzaddik. That if he has a heart and he has a love, it's solely to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's just eine betachlis. It's in something that's not complete. Only for that reason he's called tzaddik she'eni gomer, not more. Not that he chas v'shalom has a connection to something which is overtly overtly evil, or chas v'shalom an overt love and pleasure in something which is ungodly. No, and that's what we say. Batal b'miyutei, as we gave the example. You take a little bit of coffee and put it in even the smallest bottle. You will never recognize there's coffee in there. This is a bottle of water. There's no coffee. But yes, there is coffee in there. There's for sure coffee in there. The only thing is, you can't see it. So no one, someone's going to say, oh, there's coffee. So this is similar to a dark black coffee. No, chas v'shalom, it's a tzaddik. A tzaddik which only loves Hashem, it's pure crystal water. He loves Hashem. The only thing is ain't a betachlis because just a little bit ra, but this ra is batalai, kol hachashiv, it's completely insignificant. Okay, have a great night.